Welcome to this exploration of border crossings for ADED 472 reflective practice, which includes meditations and musings while lingering at the academic workplace boundaries of practice. My name's Lynn Carton, and I'll be your guide through this reflection. My academic and work roles have been many and have spanned several decades. In order to situate where on this timeline I chose to explore borders, I've grouped up sections of my experience and indicated where major border crossings happened. Each of these groups has multiple smaller crossings contained within them. In this reflection, I'll look first at the crossing which occurred as I moved into computer operations. Once there, I spent the next 8 years working in information technology, mainly associated with mainframe and mid-range computers. My second major border crossing occurred in 1990 when I moved to Electronic Data Systems, or EDS as it was known. It was my home for the next 23 years, and during my time there, I had the opportunity to fill a wide variety of roles and participate in many communities of practice as I grew my career. In 2013, I made a significant life change and left this well-established career to go back to school in health information management. Within that period, I was a student at Fleming College and also engaged in other roles both as student and teacher. After graduating in 2014, I transitioned into the role of educator, both teaching and doing instructional design for several institutions. In 2015, I made the decision to further my education and applied to the University of the Fraser Valley in the adult education program, and am on track to graduate following the summer 2019 semester. I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian as early as public school. From that point, it became a driving force for me, and I spent my teenage years in preparation for going to the University of Guelph. My path was firm in my mind. After graduation, I intended to specialize in large animal medicine. This fit well with my family life. During my childhood, my horse obsession had eventually led us to move from the suburbs to a farm. Throughout my teen years, my life was divided into 3 parts: work on the farm where we had 3 barns and provided boarding for 20 horses in addition to our own, studying hard to achieve the grades I needed to get into university, and work to support a veterinary career in the future, including working on various types of farms and with both large and small animal veterinarians. My projected trajectory was straight from education and into practice. Like most apprentices, I worked to develop a discipline-related, in-depth bank of knowledge and skills. These plans changed in my second year of university when my parents called me home to the farm. I left school to work and assist them financially. This was a blow to me, and I mourned the loss of my life's direction. While I was working through the stages of grief, I also had to work to make money. At the time, in the early 1980s, computers were new, and I went into Gulf Oil in their mainframe computer operations in Toronto. At first, I saw myself as a tourist, someone who was just passing through this profession. My intent was to work for a few years to help with the family financial troubles and then save enough to return to university. However, I adjusted to the new environment and transitioned from someone on the margins to taking a more active interest. At the time, there were very few resources available. It was a new field, and the internet wasn't there to provide quick answers. Success depended on the community of those who had computer knowledge. It was transmitted from senior to junior, very much like an apprenticeship. Eventually, as I learned and became more confident, I realized that I wasn't going to be a tourist, but that my trajectory had changed and that I'd be remaining in the field. A side benefit to the remainder in the field was that it also allowed me to make some slight progress in my community at home. Normally, I was quite estranged from my family, sharing few of the same views and values as they did. However, since my father was also in the field but in a management capability, he spoke the same specialized language. This gave us a touchstone, and at family dinners he could talk about the industry with someone who understood, giving me the opportunity to feel a small sense of community rather than being an outsider. Despite my newfound acceptance in this community and my progress from junior to more senior roles, I carried with me a secret shame. It bothered me that I had to leave university without completing a degree. I'd always known I'd graduate from university, and the fact that I hadn't left me feeling like there was a significant failure I couldn't overcome. Especially as I would become senior in my career, it was almost unheard of not to have a degree. I was embarrassed and uncomfortable whenever the topic came up. Perhaps it was my feelings of inadequacy that drove me to work so hard and continually challenge myself. While employed at the Bank of Montreal in their data center, I knew a few people who left to go to Electronic Data Systems, EDS. This was the company started by Ross Perot, and a behemoth in the computer services industry, home to an intense work ethic. Almost universally, the people who went there came back to the bank within a year, unable to handle the pace. Of course, this meant that not only did I go to EDS, but to the most intense part of EDS, the Systems Engineering Development Program, or SED program. Ross Perot's philosophy for this program was that eagles don't flock, you have to find them one at a time. For those who came to the company in the SED program, you either gained your wings and flew, or you plummeted to the ground. I think a part of me was trying to make up for the lack of degree by applying for this ultra-elite program. In 1990, it was estimated that EDS spent over $100,000 training each SED candidate. This meant that we had to sign a promissory note that if we left the company after graduating from the program, we had to repay the funds. However, before getting to that point, you had to survive the program itself. The program was comprised of 3 phases. In between phase 2 and 3 was boot camp. This was an intense 3-month training cycle located at the Plano, Texas headquarters. It was based on Marines boot camp, and it was not for the faint of heart. A typical day included in-class work from 8 till 5. At the end of the day, we'd be given an assignment that was generally due for the next morning. In later weeks of the course, some of these assignments were rated at 10 to 12 hours to complete, meaning they'd expected you'd work all night, turn in the assignment, and be back in class the next day. The average hours in the program was about 100 a week, with only 1 weekend off halfway through as a break. As each 2-week module was completed, we were graded, and those that didn't maintain the 80% average were let go. Many people also rang the bell and left of their own accord. However, this carried consequences, as failure to complete boot camp also meant termination of employment from EDS. Boot camp at EDS was one of the worst times of my life, and yet it was also one of the best. The technical things that I learned there were of minor consequence. What I really learned was about myself. I learned how hard I could push myself, how I could overcome what seemed impossible, how to rely on myself, and how to form a community and rely on others. This experience became one of the most significant points in my life for building an identity. I emerged from the SED program feeling like I had a place in the world. I'd overcome hardship and made it into an elite group. Over the next 23 years, EDS would be my home. While there, I had many smaller border crossings as I reinvented my career within the company, progressing from systems engineer through roles such as advanced systems engineer, workplace trainer, program manager, change manager, quality manager, and project manager. I experienced multi-membership as many of these roles overlapped, as did their communities of practice. Each of these areas had their own unique communities, their own disciplines, education, and resources to draw from. I also experienced a dual role, working both as an EDS employee, but at times also wearing the hat of General Motors, the client I worked on, and filling the role of a GM employee. One of the key skills that aided me through this was adaptability. I learned that I couldn't hesitate when a new opportunity was given to me. Success depended on hitting the ground running. I learned to be flexible, to attack anything I worked on with intensity, and to rely on my ability to research and learn quickly. Eventually, I hit a point in my career where I was feeling burned out. I rarely had a work week less than 60 hours, and it was always demanding. Even vacations were often interrupted by impromptu flights to deal with some issue or another. I was at the pinnacle of my career and in high demand, well established and respected, but I was also tired and felt like I needed to make a change. I discussed leaving the company, and EDS offered me a year-long sabbatical with benefits to see if it would be enough of a break to change my mind. For 4 months, I did what I hadn't done in over 20 years. I relaxed with no responsibilities. And then it was time to move on. In the break, I had ample time to reflect, and I realized that what I wanted was a better work-life balance and a career that wasn't so consistently demanding and stressful. I decided that I would reskill and look for a new career. It was at this boundary that I meet Paula Weisflock, who became a role model, mentor, and the reason I became a student at Fleming College. Paula was the program manager for the Health Information Management, or HIM program, at Fleming College in Peterborough. I'd gone to attend the open house to check out what this profession entailed. I spent an hour talking with Paula, and that hour both inspired me and changed the direction of my life. I had significant trepidation about going back to school. Almost everyone I knew said I was crazy to leave a well-established and well-paying career to be a full-time student. My husband was my sole supporter, telling me to do it before my work killed me. He saw beyond the professional appearance of my project manager persona to the real me who was struggling to maintain a sense of self. I was also nagged by the voice in the back of my head which kept saying that I'd failed to finish university, that this would be the same. I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to gain the marks I needed. Despite successes I'd had over the years, it became evident that this area is one that I still carried shame about. I vividly remember staring for what seemed like hours at my completed electronic application, afraid to press the send button. Finally, I had to kick myself off the cliff, and I punched the button, immediately experiencing an adrenaline-fueled moment of terror, which was then followed by a profound sense of relief. Adjusting to the role of student was a shock to my system, and a time when my identity underwent substantial changes. I no longer knew who I was. In my career, I had the weight of years of knowledge building and an established network of contacts and connections. I had no difficulty in navigating to accomplish what I needed to. As a student, this support structure was gone. The first day of class, I had to begin to learn about how to function in this new environment. There were new rules, new norms of behavior. I was no longer the expert that people came to when they had questions. I had to start from the beginning and develop a new community and a new identity. During my time as an HIM student, I was a member of several communities of practice. These included that of a student member, a student leader, a member of the Canadian Health Information Management Association, a member of the National Institute for Health Informatics, and a participant in the program review team. While most of my school experience was overwhelmingly positive, once I found my stride in the new environment, there was one experience that left me feeling on the margins. When I participated in my second practicum, I should have gone to a health organization and worked on an assignment or project suitable to my level as a second-year student. However, the program coordinator was having difficulty finding placements for students. Mine was arranged at the last moment, and I was put into the main office for the Local Health Integration Network, or LIN. Rather than doing a project appropriate to the level I was at educationally, I was tasked with doing the work of a senior project manager and doing planning work for a large-scale 5-year LIN-wide project. While I was able to use my project management skills, it was also uncomfortable. There were expectations of a project manager, but I didn't have an in-depth understanding of the organization and the nuances of health-based factors. I was expected to work independently, but often didn't have the knowledge, sources of information, or connections to stakeholders that I needed. The experience felt that it was convenient for the program coordinator at Fleming, but that it didn't add to my experience or in developing my HIM skills. Although the LIN where I worked during my second practicum offered me a position as a full-time project manager, I declined the offer. I graduated and, along with the rest of my class, took the national certification exam that June. My original intent was to graduate, get certified, and seek employment as an HIM coder. However, I'd been making use of the skills I'd learned in the business world related to teaching and development of training materials at various points throughout my student time, as a tutor and as a guest lecturer. I'd also been involved with CHIMA, developing professional practice briefs, participating as an editor of a primer they were developing for education, and as a reviewer of a new textbook that was being published. Paula Weisflock, the original program coordinator I met at Fleming, recommended me for a position about halfway through my second year. This position was with Healthcare Can and involved developing a new integrated quality management course and then going on to act in a faculty role with the quality program. I was very much enjoying this work. In my time at EDS, I'd done work with the education department, earning a master trainer designation, and I'd had the opportunity to continue to do bits of this type of activity in the business world. As I graduated, I was also scouted for a contract teaching position for distance education courses with McMaster University. This led to additional contracts as a subject matter expert for course development and then as a lead instructional designer. I also obtained contracts with Fleming College for course revision and contract teaching in face-to-face classrooms. I was greatly enjoying my new identity as an educational consultant. Because I elected to move into this type of work, I was able to pick and choose the contracts I took. This allowed me to meet one of the goals I'd established as I left EDS, a better work-life balance. I was opening myself to many new communities as I moved fully into education as a career. Within the institutions I worked for, I found that I became involved in several communities of practice. I think the full transition really hit home for the first time when I went into the faculty lounge, a space that had been firmly off limits when I was a student. Suddenly I had made the leap from the student community to the teaching community. As I went on, I also became involved in communities that shared common interests, such as the Instructional Design Interest Group at McMaster, a group that facilitates development of instructional design as a field of practice. I became involved in the Learning Design Services team at Fleming College and eCampus Ontario's Ontario Extend, an initiative to aid educators in developing competencies in technology. It wasn't always an easy transition to these communities of practice. When I joined Ontario Extend for the East cohort, I was very unsure of my place. I felt like an outsider, on the edges of the professional community. While most of the people were employees associated with a specific organization, I was a solo educational practitioner. At that time, I didn't have many supports in place or resources I could draw from. I wasn't a huge fan of social media, and Extend used Twitter extensively for participation in activities. I had some anxiety over my first fumbling steps, worried that I'd not use the technology properly, or worse, be obviously lacking in skills and knowledge. Extend was an affirming experience for me. I found acceptance in a wider community of educational professionals and regained an enthusiasm that had been missing from my work for several years. I developed a personal learning network, found role models, and avidly participated in the activities, further developing resources and skills. Working with Extend was like dropping a pebble in a pond. Ripples expanded from the point of impact, and that's how I felt my connections with educators grew. I had been working as an educator for about a year and was moving from the margins of the practice and into the center, a place where I felt more comfortable. This gave me the opportunity to evaluate more closely and take a look at my approaches, my successes, and failures. I began to examine how I was teaching and developing courses and realized that I often applied the pedagogy I'd learned in a business environment. This frequently took the form of being the sage on the stage. I compared how I was teaching to what I'd liked in courses and teachers as an HIM student and realized that I needed to update my perspectives on education. I needed to learn approaches that were more collaborative and experiential. This led me to consider part-time study at the university level. While I had gained some confidence in my abilities as a student from my Fleming experience, I questioned whether I'd be able to keep up with university level work. Still, the desire to improve my abilities as an instructor pushed me to explore these educational options. At UFV, I found a new community, that of our virtual classroom of students. The format of classes at UFV encourages us to interact and share experiences. This gives us access to a panorama of knowledge and a strong desire to share, contribute, and collaborate. When I speak to others about my experiences at UFV, I tell them that the instructors are top notch, but that we also learn volumes from our classmates. I've gleaned many wonderful ideas from my time at UFV and have been fortunate enough to be able to actively integrate these learnings into my work. My teaching practice has evolved to a new level while at UFV, and I can see the presence of the body of knowledge in the teaching I do and in the courses I develop. I'm passing through UFV as a sojourner on my journey to a deeper work practice. Not all of my time at UFV has been easy. I come from a very business and practice-based background, which didn't see the value of activities such as reflection. The first course I had where we had to do a reflection on ourselves and explore our identity was very challenging. While I've grown to appreciate the reflective side, it's been a struggle to overcome my initial dismissive attitude towards the value of reflection. UFB is allowing me to finally, almost 30 years later, fulfill one of my life's goals, to obtain a university degree. As I near my completion with the summer 2019 courses, I'm feeling a profound sense of accomplishment and a quiet joy that I'll be able to stand up and say that I'm a university graduate. This is a major component that I'm adding to my identity. The shame I felt for so many years at not having a degree will be able to be exchanged for a sense of pride. My experiences at the borders of work and academia are not yet over. My plans for the future will weave back and forth between the two. My work life will continue with teaching and instructional design. Although I want to keep my hand in with a bit of teaching, I've found a passion for instructional design and will continue to deepen my involvement with it in the workplace and in professional communities and associations. I have an interest in language and have been self-studying Korean for the last few years. I'm considering continuing on at UFB after getting my bachelor's degree to take the Teaching English as a Second Language certification. Here is where interest, work, and academics come together. I've been investigating a summer in Korea, taking a university language immersion course. While there, my skills in teaching and a TESOL certification would open the doors to working as a tutor. Further down the road, I'm looking towards a master's degree. As the person who felt inadequate for most of their life for not having a degree, it's an unexpected pleasure to consider furthering my education in this way. I have many ideas and plans, and as I've found in the past, we can never be sure of where life will lead us. As long as we remain true to ourselves, be willing to evolve our identity, and build new connections as we go, our border crossings will give us access to new and exciting lands. As Malcolm X said, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today.